Have you ever felt like no matter how much you accomplish, your body is still screaming for rest, but your brain won't let you slow down? Here's something most women are never told: that exhaustion, irritability, or mental fog isn't laziness, it's dysregulation. And honoring your body's bio budget might be the most radical healing thing you ever do. Today, we're diving into sustainable, personalized tools for nervous system care that help you rebuild energy, focus, and flow, not through hustle or hacks, but through regulation and restoration. It's your Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach Jovonnie, and we are going to be diving into a magnificent episode today. But if you don't know, now you know. It's time to vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. It's your Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach Jovonnie, and I'm helping women who are tired of pushing through pelvic pain, burnout, and feeling dismissed finally understand what their bodies are trying to tell them before they lose more years, accepting stress as their baseline. And today's guest, their journey from high achieving, high masking, burnout bio budget whisperer will speak directly to anyone who feels like they're holding it all together. Barely. Welcome to the Good Vibe Studio, Garrett.
Thanks for having me here, Joe. I'm excited to see
No
you.
problem at all. Can you kind of just give us some insights on how your story got us to the work that you do right now?
Yeah, great question. So I used to work in a pretty corporate culture. It was great. We had a bunch of P&Ls that we always look at the bottom lines, little tweaks here and there. And at the time, I was a leader of a few different teams. I had my own team leaders. They had their staff. And so we were spread out across 7 locations, lots of personalities. I loved the work. I loved the value of what we were doing. We were helping professionals and high achievers reach their health and wellness goals. But I was working 90 plus hours a week, most weeks. It was a hospitality company, so we were open 7 days a week, 20 of the 24 hours a day. So there always felt like there was a reason to be on and not a lot of downtime. I had a pretty simple life. I didn't have kids. I had my partner, my dog. But it was a lot to try to maintain all those personalities. And to try to get ahead, I started cutting corners on my sleep, started skipping some meals here and there. But more importantly, there was this threat that I always feel like it was happening, that if there was a need that was going on that I didn't feel like that I could fulfill and I didn't do it, then that wasn't okay. It wasn't okay for me. It wasn't okay for my team. It wasn't okay for the people they served. And I was letting someone down. And so no matter what, no matter how well we were doing on the spreadsheets, it always felt like that threat was there. And so it felt easy and justified to skip those meals and to not care for myself, because what are my needs? Someone else has got something going on. Let's take care of them. And that worked until it didn't work anymore. Chronic pain, back pain, my relationships were strained. My dog wasn't so cute anymore. Same dog the day before. Today, they're stressing me out. Yesterday, they're cute as hell. What the heck happened? Nothing, they didn't do anything different, right? All of a sudden, it's just, how you're doing that day. And there's only so much you control. So when stuff happens personally, professionally, family, things like that, it adds to that stress. And then when there's things going on in business too, that adds to that stress as well. And so it can be really challenging to try to find a way out of that.
And I'm really glad that you said that. Challenging to find a way out of it, out of the stress, especially if that's someone's norm or it's what's created I would say their survival mode. Just trying to survive one day after the next day or one moment after the next moment, not necessarily knowing when they actually got into that state of survival, but it's just their absolute norm. And just because it's your norm doesn't mean that it's normal. for someone to experience that. And I'm really glad that you kind of gave us that idea of what it looked like for you, 90 plus hours a week. And then you said that starts cutting into the sleep. The sleep starts to take a back burner and not being prioritized. Then you start skipping meals, or let's say missing meals, because you're so focused on the productivity, you don't even realize that you're not caring for yourself and giving your body what it needs to continue to function. And then you said it, no matter the data, I felt like there was a threat to what it is that you needed to do. And that started leading you to the chronic pain. And we know that that could be challenging. And sometimes we even think that we can just push through the pain. And I know there's so many people that push through the pain because they feel like that's the most wise and easiest thing to do, is just to push through, versus really trying to get a better understanding of what is my body telling me right now? What is it trying to communicate with me? But let's start here. You say most people are prioritizing everything except their well-being. Why do you think that is? And what's the real hidden cost to that, Garrett?
Yeah, I think here in the States, especially, we have this, go big, go home, work harder, do more. Even if you are playing, it's because you earned it, because you work so hard, you now get a chance to take a break. And our culture reinforces that. There's, the least amount of vacation days, the most amount of people sick at work working here in the States. Some of that's, the cost of living versus the income that we make. But some of it's the culture. It's that we believe that hard work is the key to success, and that if someone didn't earn their success through all the sweat equity, then they don't really deserve it. And so we kind of have this myth that the more you're willing to sacrifice, the more you're likely to succeed. And in fact, that success requires that sacrifice even. And so sometimes these like really important things, these signals that we get, we dismiss them. And sometimes we even, pat ourselves on the back because we're like, look, this thing is evidence that you're doing hard work, and hard work is good. And so this is a good thing, even though too much of a good thing is bad, right?
Moderation, right, is always the key. One of the things that I loved about what you just said is that you have to earn the break. And I feel like that's spot on, because if not, you're going to feel guilty for being lazy, guilty for resting, guilty for not accomplishing all the things you had on your to-do list, guilty for not showing up in all the ways that you wanted to show up, and saying, but I didn't earn or deserve the break. And I also like that you talked about more sacrifice points to trying to prove that you're more successful. And that's not necessarily the key. I mean, sometimes the success is in how you actually care for yourself, how you show up for yourself, how you love yourself. And I was kind of talking about this in a conversation the other day, and it was like, but sometimes I feel like people can't show up for themselves because they don't know themselves, Garrett. I feel like when you don't spend enough time getting to know you, figuring out how you need to care for you, love you, show up for you, it's hard to just say that. Like you talked about earlier about it being challenges. Like, how does someone even get to a place where they actually need to understand who they are in order to be able to show up in that way and break out of the survival mode and listen to the pain? What do you think is I won't even say hack, because we said it's not hacks around here, like the real life question, thought, or process that we can take to approach that, Garrett?
Yeah, it's such a challenging question to answer, like with any real certainty, because everybody's unique and different, right? We all need sleep. We all need love and affection, right? We all need a roof over our head, clothes on our back, food in our bellies. But there's certain times, if you're out in the desert and, you've been stranded, drinking a Diet Coke or, something worse is probably still healthier for you than going without. So whatever you're doing to cope to get through today, if you're in the desert, good for you. Let's get through that next day. But if we can conserve something else to care for ourselves and learn even a little bit more about what we need, eventually we can kind of like, instead of pushing that rock uphill, we can almost feel like we're pushing it downhill. And I do think the easiest way to think about that is, if we think of every individual as having their own unique nervous system needs, and then we understand what their environment has, and we see that gap, we can kind of get curious about how to narrow that gap. And that might look very different, depending on who we're talking to and the environment they find themselves in.
Thank you. Your own unique nervous system. needs and how we really truly learn our needs. Can you explain the concept of a bio budget and why is it such a game changer for people constantly on the edge of burnout, Garrett?
Yeah, there's a psychologist, Dr. Dan Siegel, who talks about the window of tolerance, and the wider it is, the easier it is to feel normal being you. And the smaller that window of tolerance is, the harder it is to feel okay, right? Our best ideas, our most connected moments come from when we're in that state. Um, but if we don't get enough sleep or enough food, it narrows that window pretty small. It's almost like getting enough gas in your car for the trip that you're going to take. And you can't always regulate your sleep as best as you can. Maybe your partner's snoring that night, or maybe the temperature outside is a little too hot, or something's too cold. Whatever may be happening. But there's also our thoughts and feelings that show up that kind of disturb that as well. So the bio budgets, I always think of like sleep, movement, food, nutrition, hydration, getting all those little boxes ticked. And what's really fascinating to me is like those seem so obvious to people. Like it's like not even, oh yeah, of course, this isn't even the real secrets. Let's not get out of our notes. It's just like, I got it, whatever. But it's really real. Like when Snickers says you're not you when you're hungry, they're not kidding. Like that is a joke, but it's real. Like you cannot pay attention, you can't focus, you can't creatively problem solve. There was one client who I worked with, we're in Southern California, big freeways, lots of traffic. And every time she would head into work, just before her exit on the 10, we should have to change lanes, she would get this existential feeling of dread washing through her. And she was like, man, is it dreading going into work and seeing my clients? Is it dreading going in and like dealing with my boss? Is it dreading the 12 hours of work that I'm waiting for? Is it the 20 cars that I'm going to have to move past to get off this exit in the next, half mile? And it could have been all those things, but she was having this very real experience in her body. And then she was looking for reasons to justify that internal experience. She had a constant glucose monitor eventually, and we put it on her and we looked at some of that data. And every day her coffee and pastry would spike her glucose and then drop it right at that same spot on the freeway every day. So all of those thoughts she was having about this dread in her life was really more about her blood glucose levels than they were anything else. So she added some protein into the coffee. She added a protein pastry to it, and it balanced out her glucose levels just enough where she wasn't thinking that, oh, traffic is terrible, my job is terrible, my boss is terrible, my clients are terrible, I'm a no good, very bad person. And it was that simple little change in her biology, getting enough food in her system, balancing her blood glucose, that made a difference in her mental and emotional state around everything she was thinking about. It was a big deal because that's every day, all day.
Yeah, and I thank you for sharing that story. And I love that you talked about the bio budget being things that seem so obvious to us and what we need and how we should show up, how we should care for ourselves. It took a 4-hour long surgery for me to realize that my lifestyle habits, the things that I did daily or regularly or allowed to have, was fueling the chronic inflammation that was in my body that led to a stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and 2 small fibroids at the time of my surgery, March 2020. And I had no idea all of this inflammation, all of this hormonal chaos, all of these things were happening on the inside of my body because, like you said, in your story with the lady, you're focused on all of these external things, things
Yep.
that you need to do. The environment, the stressful environment, the workplace. You started your own story with the workplace, triggers in the workplace, just feeling overwhelmed. But then it came to food, not eating. There have been plenty of times I just didn't even have an appetite, so I'm not even thinking about eating or forcing myself to eat anything, get any type of nutrients in. Being a people pleaser. There are so many different identities. There were so many different thoughts, feelings, beliefs that I was possessing and holding that I had no idea was causing all of the issues in my body. And it was I call it my M to the third degree healing empowerment formula: mindset, mindful eating, and movement. And those 3 pillars
Mm,
is what helped me reestablish a lifestyle that was more anti-inflammatory, that was more healing, that was more vibrant and moving me out of survival mode into thriving, because I was changing my identity, because I was changing my decisions, because I was getting to know myself, love myself, and care for myself in a different way. And it started to show up in my decisions, and those decisions in turn change your behaviors. And so like I'm really glad that you brought that into the conversation. And then I had these 15 hidden lifestyle disruptors. The link is in the show notes for anybody who wants to grab that free guide. But that really helped put context, because Garrett, it was 14 out of the 15 I had experienced, and I had no idea that they were triggering the inflammation, the pelvic pain, the fatigue, the burnout. It was this unhealthy version of myself. And I've had health degrees. Like I have a health promotion bachelor's degree, a health administration master's degree, certification as a health education specialist. Like there's so many different things that I knew about educationally, but it was about the experience and putting in the lifestyles when it came to that. And then I started realizing just the simple swaps can really start making you feel lighter, calmer, more energized when you're thinking about some of those lifestyle hidden triggers that you don't even realize. You already talked about one of them, and it was about sleep. Like you can say rest is very important, but sometimes people can't even get that good quality of sleep. And understanding, how do I approach sleep? How do I approach stress? And I'm just so grateful that you broke that down into that story. But I also want you to kind of tell us a little bit about some of those common burnout red flags that people miss, especially those who are high performing or caregiving nonstop. What are some of those red flags, Garrett?
If you feel like you're rolling your eyes to yourself, you know, on the face, in the surface, you know, you got a good poker face on and you're being, you know, your nice, joyful self. But internally, you feel that emotional eye roll. Yeah, it's already happening. You're already in, you know, one of those first 5 stages of burnout for sure. If you feel yourself getting irritated with little silly things, people talk about road rage, but it, you know, sometimes that's like chasing someone down, or, you know, yelling through the window, or hand gestures. But it can just be like, oh, that person's a jerk, how dare they? And it's just a sign that, like, you know, there's too much going on in the day for your current capacity in that day. Doesn't mean it'll be different. So, you know, it could be very different tomorrow. But whatever you need in that moment, you don't have enough of. And so we got to figure out what that is and give it back to you, so you can go and continue to do that stuff without all of that overwhelm, without that frustration.
So those are 2 good ones. Rolling your eyes to yourself emotionally, and then irritated with little things that really don't necessarily have to control you, your feelings, your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitude, your mood, things that you can literally like just let go and let pass you by. I think those are definitely 2 really good common burnout red flags that people can miss. And you can blame it on the person that cut you off in traffic or pumped their brakes or whatever the case may be. But like you said, you just have too much going on at this current state, which is triggering your burnout. And so it's pretty much your body begging for care. And when we those warning signs, we start trading peace for performance. And I want y'all to drop the word peace in the comments if you're still vibing with me and Garrett during this conversation. Peace for performance is what we're trading when we start ignoring those warning signs. Garrett, if you're dysregulated, others feel it. Yes. Can you break down what dysregulation actually is and why it matters in our everyday lives?
Yeah, I don't know about your parents, you know, but when my parents were having a hard time working long hours, and then I'm having my own stuff going on as a kid, you know, I would hear things like, hey, you're crying about that, I'll give you something to cry about. Oh, you think that's bad? Just wait, you know. And it was done as like like, I need to get compliance from this child. I don't have the resources. They don't have the resources. We're both in over our heads here and we're in trouble. Let's just shut up and get the heck out of here, right? But it's a sign that we were both dysregulated. You know, as a kid, you got a 4-year-old throwing a tantrum on the ground. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Is there just too much going on? Maybe they didn't get enough sleep the night before. Maybe something stressful happened for them. But then you got your whole day too. And so they're dysregulated and you're dysregulated. There's no way for this to come down. If you're regulated, they get dysregulated. Hey, there's a safe place to come back down. They can feel calm, collected. You can both move forward together. But if there's none of that little blowing off steam for somebody, we're in trouble. It's just going to be hard. And that's true just with kids as it is at work. With your supervisor, or if you are a supervisor, you're a surrogate parent. People turn to you when things are stressful and they look for you to make sure that it's okay. Kid falls down, scrapes their knee. They look, is it a big deal? And you're like, no, it's not a big deal. It's going to be okay. They're like, okay, okay. Same thing happens at work. Hey, this thing went bad. And they're like, oh no. And if your boss is like, yeah, it's real bad and you're terrible and how dare, like that just heightens that response. And now there's nowhere for it to come down. We run hot for so long, it results in burnout. And unfortunately, so many people are dysregulated so often, and there's very few places to go get regulated consistently enough to match the demands that they need in their nervous system to be okay. We got burnout being so ubiquitous. And then as a result of that, you see a lot of health issues that show up.
I thank you for that breakdown, and I definitely could see it, feel it, sense it through
Yeah.
the story and the breakdown of the parent and the child, and understanding where the dysregulations are. And if you have that regulated person, it'll allow the dysregulator to come down, meet you, so you can move forward. What are some of the, I'm gonna say, some of the common ways that people you've worked with have been able to get regulated? What are just some of those simple ways that people who could be listening right now could say, I'm going to use this tip that I just heard Garrett and Jovonnie talk about to help me be more regulated, because I see myself feeling more dysregulated than I would like?
Yeah. So there's the stressors in our life and then there's the stress, right? So when we're talking about this right now, we're talking about the stress itself. We need to do something with it. A lot of the times we're hardwired, for a long time to do something when something stressful happens, to take an action. Now, sometimes the action we're supposed to take is no action. Because if we took an action, we tell your boss off, you yell back at the jerk in the street, that is more dangerous, right? So instead, we just, do the thing, be an adult. Okay. But that stress is still there. So we have to figure out how to manage that and still stay safe. But then there's the stressors. There's the ongoing stuff, maybe you have relationships, you have these things, you're in a challenging time in your life. Okay. When we don't have a chance to handle the stress, those stressors overwhelm us to the point where we can't really take action. And so if we're like, oh, I can't do it, I can't rise to the occasion, no matter how hard I'm working, it doesn't seem to be enough. Maybe we're on the wrong end of the problem. Maybe we need to be focused on just the stress response and being able to kind of address that. So some of the tools for that specifically, a lot of times it's a somatic intervention. It's like a body up thing. It lives in our nervous system, in our body, in the way we feel and experience the world. So little kids, they get regulated by care, affection, and play. Adults, we could do the same thing, we could care for ourselves. Play's a little bit more challenging of a concept for adults to understand how to give themselves, but enjoyment, getting lost in a task that you find enjoying, is a regulating thing. And that could be like dusting your books. It could be going for a walk. It could be playing a video game for some people. For some people, it could be baking, doing something that they truly enjoy just because they enjoy that task and being present with it. But even if that's too much to ask, we got way too many things to do in that day, and it's all out of your control. You're on everyone else's to-do list, and so there's no room for you on your own. That's where like breath work is really powerful, because it's something you can do in the moment that calms down the intensity of the stress response and sends a signal to your body that, yes, the stressor is present, but I am not in distress. And so there's lots of different types of breathing practices that help calm the nervous system down. Just kind of hit pause for a moment. But then there's some other things where we could actually, if we're having anger, fear, frustration, we feel like we're threatened, we can actually clench our jaw, clench our fists, hold our breath in and squeeze our pelvic floor muscles, the both anterior, posterior, and then let it all go. You could be in a board meeting or giving a presentation and no one even know that you're doing the regulation task. That clench and relax, clench and relax. They say 5 to 10 is like minimum effective dose, but there's no maximum because there's no downside. It's not like trying to have a glass of wine or a martini or 10 to try to release that stress. It's something that has no negative outcomes associated with it. And so that's a really powerful one too.
I appreciate it. So Stress versus the stressors, and depending on which angle you're at and which one you're trying to eliminate or manage,
Yeah.
is key. But I like that you said care, affection, play, finding enjoyment, breath work. I think breath work is absolutely phenomenal, especially for people in like debilitating pain.
Mm.
That pelvic pain, and just getting in the breath work definitely does decrease the pain a
Yeah.
lot, and being able to relax that body, and just focusing on being present with the body and noticing things. So I love breath work. And then the clench and relax. I think that's a dope one. Good tool to be able to use that clench and relax. Like you said, no one in the boardroom knows that you're ready to flip that table over if you're getting in your own clench and relax method to utilize that wellness tool to manage the stress. And the big question in that piece is, are you on your to-do list? And I think
Mm.
that's a really good, powerful question, even to start the day off. To start your day is, where am I on my to-do list?
Yeah.
And I think that right there shows you how you're going to show up for you and how much you're showing up for you versus everyone else. And so I really like that question. Are you on your to-do list? We kind of been talking about nervous system a little bit, and we
Yeah.
talked about you mentioned to me before that nervous system first success is, how does that look different than traditional productivity? Nervous system first,
Yep.
traditional productivity. Can you break down the difference between the two?
Yeah. So if people are looking at like productivity hacks or ways of staying motivated or how to get more things done, right? You can go online, you'll see a ton of that stuff. And you'll probably try a few things and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But sometimes taking something that's off the shelf, it doesn't always fit the way you would like. You're like, oh, it looks great on the model, looks great on the mannequin. Ugh, is it me? It must be me because the clothes look great. So it's got to be my problem, right? And I think we do the same thing with these productivity hacks or these productivity strategies. And so what's really interesting to me is if we know what works for you, what works for your nervous system, then we know which one of those strategies are best fit for you to start using, to look into, instead of doing a bunch of trial and error all the time. There's some people where it's hard for them to prioritize. If they have 5 things that need to be done, they're all equally important. And so if they miss one of the 5, the whole world's falling down. Some people, that's their strength. They're like, no, if we just do this one thing, that's the only thing that matters. And everything else can fall by the wayside and I know it can be okay. But that is a different skill. Not everybody has that. Some people, they need to start with the hardest thing because then they know it's all downhill from there. Other people, if you make them start with the hardest thing, they won't ever start. They need those quick, easy wins to get the dopamine flowing to make it easier to move forward to the next harder, bigger task. And so, kind of knowing what your executive functioning strengths are and then building strategies that are accommodating of those instead of ones that are challenging to it makes it much easier to move through your day with efficiency without so much like, man up, you can do this, internal drill instructor kind of shame, blame, guilt, fear, internal inner critic monologue stuff, which is emotionally exhausting and stressful as well.
I agree. And I like that you talked about the momentum wins. And sometimes people really do need that. It's almost like not even just a momentum win, Garrett, but a confidence booster that I can really do this. I did
Yeah.
it. How can I do this again? What does it look like if I keep doing this again? And that's the big thing for me when it comes to like habit formation and habit stacking, or just the
Yeah.
belief that something is possible. How did I feel after doing it? It made me think about um, my grandma. My grandma got on the vibration plate for the first time, and she really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. The next day, she was just like, "Oh my goodness, I felt so much better. My walking was better. I wasn't in a lot of pain. I felt more, energy." And so she got back on it the next day, and that's what she was telling me while she was on it on the second day. And I was like, "Oh, so it felt good." She was like, "Yeah, so I want to do it again because I want to keep feeling good." And I think when people really do something different, and they're doing something that might be beneficial to their health, because sometimes I feel like, and we talked about this before, Garrett, we always talk about people thinking about health and fitness as like it's an afterthought. Like they can't show up and just choose a healthier decision or choose
Yeah.
themselves in a different way, because it can be challenging for some people. And so we want to definitely make sure that people know that it's not easy always to change who you are and to embody a different identity. But when she was on the vibration plate and I was talking to her via video, it was the only reason why she got back on it the next day was because she felt so good and she saw the benefits immediately, you know. And sometimes people want to see immediate results. They want to get an immediate win before they believe that this is something that is truly beneficial for them. And so like that was just something that came to me while you were talking about that. When it comes to momentum, yes, because it's showing you that you can do it, but then the belief that it's beneficial because you're now getting some different type of result. You feel different, and it's a good difference and it's positive. But sometimes, Garrett, we know it's not going to feel good in the beginning when you're doing something that's different. And when I think about that, it makes me think about when I really wanted to embrace healing after my surgery and realizing what all was going on inside of my body. And you always think you're okay when you feel good or you think you look good on the outside. And then when someone goes on in the inside and say all these different things that are happening, you like, whoa, maybe I wasn't as mindful and present and understanding of what my lifestyle was causing into my life. And I remember having to heal and choose me was hard at first. And I never realized how much I've allowed other people to take priority over how I showed up and cared for myself. And that didn't feel good. It was very uncomfortable to prioritize myself. It was very uncomfortable to realize that I didn't really love myself like I thought I loved myself because of the thoughts, the feelings, the beliefs, and the decisions that I was making to stay in areas, places, relationships that weren't conducive to who I wanted to become, who I needed to be to feel good inside and out, and to move from that survivor to thriving. And it also looked like some of the relationship dynamics had to change, not just with myself, but for others. Sometimes it doesn't feel good when you're going through it and you're changing, but eventually you start realizing how much better off you are because of the shifts and the changes that you made, and to know that you were worth it. And so I'm not quite sure who's listening to us right now, but I want you to know that you're worth the change. You're worth getting the momentum wins. You're worth just doing something different just to show up for yourself, love yourself, care for yourself, no matter how uncomfortable, challenging, or hard it may be. You're worth it and you deserve it. Garrett, let's talk about your A to the third degree. I'm going to just say A to the third degree because I say my M to the third degree, but your A3 framework: assess, accommodate, and align. How does it help people rebuild trust with themselves and feel less reactive?
Yeah. There's so many things that can be helpful for people. So to try to simplify that in a way and make it scalable so we can get to the end result sooner, right? If we know what we need, it makes it much easier to give it to ourselves. You know, if we have very general interventions like, oh, you know, these are good ideas. Okay, great. Let's move in the right direction. But maybe it's a good idea for everybody, but not the one thing you need to do to see an immediate change, feel that one thing that makes all the difference. So if we know that and we assess it, great. Now we can accommodate it and we can do everyone else's to-do list and make sure there's still room for us on there. And then if we really think about it, we can get creative. We can do that smarter, not harder piece that everyone talks about. But we can't outwork our nervous system. So we have to start the other way. We have to start with what we need first, and then we can accommodate it, and then we can align. We can get smarter about how we align our work to what we need to do and how we work best. And so it's kind of just flipping that on its head a little bit, where people are like, oh, I'll just outwork it. I can just be smart. I can work harder. I can do something different. And if you're not getting what you need, you're not going to be able to do that. You want to be able to think creatively to be able to do it, let alone show up consistently enough to be able to get the results from all the effort you're making in the first place. And so that first part is kind of 7 assessments of, like you mentioned, the hidden lifestyle kind of factors that show up that trip people up, that make a big impact that we're not always aware of. Those bio budgets is one of them. But even our sensory thresholds. They did a study with 4-year-olds, the marshmallow study, where they talked about these 4-year-olds have grit. And so, you know, they had better academic careers, they had better relationships, they had more higher incomes later in life. But then they followed up with the 4-year-olds that didn't have grit. They determined this by giving a 4-year-old a marshmallow, and then the psychologist would leave the room, and before they left, they would say, hey, when I come back, if you haven't eaten your marshmallow, I'll bring you another one. So you'll have 2 marshmallows. And so the kids that said yes to the first marshmallow and couldn't wait for the second one, they determined that these kids, like, their academics struggled, their career struggled. And so there's this idea that there's these people that have grit, that have willpower, that have mind over matter, and then there's people that don't. And that was the conclusion that a lot of people took from that study for a long time. And they're like, wow, that thing forms at 4 years old. It must be like innate to your character as a person at 4. Eventually, they followed up with the 4-year-olds. They put them through a battery of assessments, the ones that took and ate that first marshmallow. And they found out that the environment they were testing these kids in was so challenging for their unique nervous system needs that just sitting in the freaking chair was a win, let alone being able to delay this gratification enough to be able to get the rewards for it. And what's really like heartbreaking about that is the environment that they tested them in was in a classroom setting. So that's every day for the rest of their 14 years of their life. And that's where they're not going to have an academic career and a challenging having a job later that's also going to be successful. It's nothing to do with grit at all. It just has to do with matching their nervous system with the environment close enough that they can be a better version of themselves and make it easy and effortless to say no to the first marshmallow so you can get the second one.
I'm really glad that you brought in environment plus nervous system, because you can have all of the tools you could have, and still be in the wrong environment to be able to see the effectiveness, the efficiency of those tools being utilized for your better being or your well-being. And so
Yeah.
I'm really glad that you brought in that environment and nervous system and how they are related and impact, and they kind of go hand in hand. And I also like that you said, if we know what we need, and a lot of times, Garrett, people don't know what they need. And we talked about the bio budget earlier. I told you about the 15 hidden lifestyle triggers fueling inflammation, pelvic pain, guide that's in the show notes. And like you said, a lot of it feels like we know these things or these things are important, but people don't necessarily know how to approach them, how to really embody them, how to really start making the changes to swap the swaps, really creating a lifestyle around adopting these things. And it doesn't happen all at one time or all in the thing. But my first question that kind of came up when you were talking about breaking that down was, how does someone get to know exactly what they need?
Yeah. Some of that we can test for. We can do some self-assessments. I'm a big fan of those, especially because you can get before and afters, right? But some of the things that people need is knowing that how they work best, their executive functioning strengths, knowing their values, and what really matters to them, knowing their character strengths. Is integrity a big deal for you? Is temperance and wisdom a big deal for you? And being able to live those. If you're in an environment where what you feel like is an integrity conversation and what your expectations of your job are come in conflict, that's not going to be a healthy environment for you to be in for a long term. And so knowing those values and being able to act them every day is important. But then our attachment styles, how we relate to people and relationships. When things get stressful, do we pull away or do we move in closer to create that safety and closeness and connection? And some of that's about our subconscious beliefs. You mentioned people pleasing, but also these ideas of like, am I enough? Do I matter? Am I worthy? Right? And if we don't have those anchored beliefs, it makes it really hard to take action. If you don't believe you're worthy of effort, it's really hard to make effort because you're going to feel foolish the whole time you're taking it. You're going to kind of be embarrassed. And so that feeling creates even more stress, even as you're doing these things that take effort because it's change. And then you're bringing along this emotional feeling along with that belief. It gets tough. And if we don't know those emotions, sometimes like even those words, am I embarrassed? Am I ashamed? Am I afraid? Am I humiliated? Those are like hard words for people to kind of differentiate. Most of us, we're happy, glad, sad, mad. That's it. But if we're not like a sommelier of our emotions, it makes it really hard to be able to know what we're experiencing and how to address it and move forward.
Yes, thank you. So I got self-assessment. So this is all about how, if we know what we really need, how can you identify what you really need? And I got one, self-assessment, two, your functioning strengths, three,
Mhm.
your values, really just knowing what those are, four, your
Yeah.
character strengths,
Yeah.
five, your attachment styles, and
Yeah.
six, your subconscious beliefs. I really believe that those six, and there's more, you could definitely expand on that too, but just within this frame, those six are a really great place to start. And so if you're listening right now and you're like, well, I really don't know what I need, or I need everything, like now you can kind of just say, well, let's self-assess, let's really figure out who I am. And for me, Garrett, I have this spot your trigger quiz. It's in the
Mm,
show notes, but I have a spot your trigger quiz so you can kind of gauge and see where the disruption is really being caused in your life. Like that's an assessment within itself.
it
Or
is.
you could just take I would say, a inventory of what your day
Mhm.
looked like, and kind
Yeah.
of assess how you showed up for you. What did it look like for you today? What things would you want to see improve? What things could you do a little less of? But then looking at those things with those six lenses that you just gave us, that's even more powerful. Like that'll even show you even more about what it is that you need. And so I'm really grateful that you broke that down, because I think at the end of the day, Garrett, when you're regulated, you don't just react, you find a powerful way to respond. And that shift is truly where I believe healing begins. For someone who's listening that's done all the right things and still feels off, what might they be missing when it comes to aligning with their true needs, Garrett?
Yeah. Process of elimination. What's all
Mm-hmm.
the right things? What worked, because, and what worked best for you is kind of interesting. Um, but sometimes a way of thinking about it is, okay, well, when did I feel good? When did I feel my best? When was it easy to be me and enjoyable? Okay, what was going on then? And then what's missing now? And maybe that's a nice way to kind of, sort through all the possibilities of what it could be, because there's a lot out there. But that one usually gives some insights for people.
Thank you. I love this one. Easy to be me. When was it easy to be me? I think that's very much so powerful, because it then kind of goes back into your character strengths,
Yeah.
that aligns with your values and also your subconscious beliefs. But I really love the, when was it easy to be me? Who was I around when I felt more alive, more me, unapologetically? I
Yeah.
think that plays a huge part in it as well. And so I'm really glad that you said that, because I've seen so many comments, heard so many conversations that people have tried everything with people, that have experiences with endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids. Sometimes they feel like they've tried everything and nothing works. It's almost as if they are a victim to their body, and a victim of a condition or a diagnosis, where it's almost as if sometimes their identity is found in that diagnosis than it is in who they truly are. And so I sometimes wrestle with like being in those spaces, because I just want to say there's no way that you've tried everything. Like at the point of this conversation, at the time of this recording, like over 120 episodes of the Empire Plates, Empire Lives podcast has been, released at this point. And it's like there's no way that you can listen to every single episode and say, I've tried all of these things, and I've tried it for enough time, like a long enough
Sure.
period of time, to truly see if it was beneficial and what has truly worked. Because I feel like some people don't have enough time. Some people don't have that new identity. Sometimes people are still struggling with old thoughts, old feelings, old beliefs, and they truly haven't let that go in order to
Mm,
embody a new state of mind healing, and to know that healing could look different, like a
yeah.
truly different healing tool, wellness tool could be something that you never thought that would make you feel better. Let's go back to my grandma on the vibration plate. Like, who
Yeah.
would have thought if she got on the vibration plate for 10 minutes, did her, exercises that she's done without the vibration plate, feel so much better the next day. Just
Yeah.
getting things moving. And so I really like how we broke that down and really are giving context around what is truly possible. What role do you believe self-compassion plays in reducing burnout? And how do we break free from the belief that we have to earn that rest or peace, what we talked about earlier?
Yeah. I think if it's not born into us, by our family, it's definitely something that's reflected back to us so much that it feels like we're a fish in water, where you don't notice you're wet because it's just so ubiquitous, it's everywhere. Especially if you're a person who cares and sees how things could be and where they are, and believes in the opportunity to make a difference, and then their power to do so. Sometimes those are the people that burn out the most, because they have this vision of what life could or should be versus what it is, and then they notice their skill or their ability to make that true is comes up against some challenges. And I think they get hard on themselves no matter the results that they got. I always forget if it's Beethoven or Mozart, but he was going deaf, and some guy was like, "Oh, you got to love your music." And he's like, "Well, I can't hear, but I can tell you it's crap." And they're like, I'm obviously paraphrasing, right? They're like, "How do you know it's crap?" And he's like, "Well, in my mind, when I envision this orchestral arrangement, it's amazing. When I write it down, it's already compromised. And then when these talented musicians the world over are trying to interpret my interpretation, they're missing it too." And then you got the conductor out there who's got their own thing. And like, yeah, I'm sure it's beautiful, but compared to what I think or experience in my mind and see in my vision, it's a carbon copy of a carbon copy of a carbon copy. And that like exacting nature makes it really hard to live with any type of pleasure or joy or enthusiasm or presence of mind. And so that self-compassion, being like, yeah, maybe it's not the best thing in the world or the best it could possibly ever be, but is it good? Is there a good part of it? Do I like this one part of it enough to appreciate it and actually feel that like feeling of gratitude and appreciation for yourself and others? It's hard.
Thank you. It is. It is. Come on, self-compassion. I think it's
Yeah.
definitely needed. And we talked about shame, and sometimes shame takes a huge root of maintaining in someone's story that they
Mhm.
haven't been able to release, let go of, so they could change that narrative. Sometimes it could be other traumas or traumatic events, and they
Mhm.
haven't truly, been able to release that, let that go, and remove that from their story or their identity. And that resistance causes friction for more self compassion to be able to truly embrace healing in a way that they may need, or that they could go after if they gave themselves the permission. And I think it all goes back to choosing and making a decision to give myself permission to heal, to let go, and to provide myself with the compassion to know that I am okay, and I deserve this, and this is what I'm going after. And I'll do the work to get to that point because I know I need to change who I am to make that happen. You've personally navigated chronic pain and ADHD. How did those experiences inform your approach to healing and coaching others, Garrett?
Yeah. Um, Chronic pain is interesting. There's a lot of people that think that chronic pain is a physical only symptom. Like you, when I first went and got like raised my hand and asked for help with my chronic hip pain, I went to the ER. It was so bad I could not handle it. Right. And the attending physician did a palpatory assessment Friday night at 9 o'clock after work. Finally made time to sneak into the ER. Right. And halfway through the examination, he kind of has this like accusatory look, like there's nothing here. Like, what are you doing on a Friday night having me palpate your groin? Like that was my exciting night. Friday nights out is what I did for fun, is what this like kind of insinuation was. And I was really, frustrated by that, because here I am in like real physical chronic pain that's like really in a flare up right now. And this physician who's supposed to be the one that's supposed to be able to help me is just like, yeah, man, this isn't something. What he really was saying is like the tools I have here, a prescription and, a scalpel aren't the tools you need for this pain you're experiencing. And he's right. Like if he would have said that to me, I would have been like, oh, well, what are? Let's share some of this wisdom. Unfortunately, we didn't have that conversation, so it took some time to figure that out on my own. But the mental and emotional distress that I felt like I was always under, and then my need to always feel like I could perform, that conflict there showed up in that tissue tension. Eventually, I was able to, you know, find someone that could help me work through that mentally, emotionally, mindset wise, belief wise, and also somatically, like in the actual tissues. You mentioned your grandma on the vibe plate where she can like feel the vibration and it changes her perception of how it feels in her body. But our body responds to different types of hot, cold, slap, tickle, poke, itch, all of these things. Those sensors live in our skin, and you can kind of create a different experience for yourself. Like you said for yourself, it wasn't until your education and your personal experience you were like, oh, I need to put these together. It's that we are experiential learners. We have to feel it to know it, and once we can do that, it makes a big difference. And so your grandma's a great example of that. You going through your own experience is another example of that. Feeling it change and then like going, okay, I can lean into this, was really powerful. And so chronic pain, I think, is better thought of as an emotion than it is necessarily like a physical injury. And so I
Mm.
think just having that awareness sometimes is enough to create like more opportunities to find something that will actually help relieve some of the intensity.
And that's powerful within itself. It's just reminding people that all pain isn't just physical, as well, Garrett, because I too know so many women, and people that have gone to the emergency room due to chronic pain, pelvic pain, and just seeking help.
Yep.
Not necessarily just wanting some type of, medication to help with the pain, but really to get answers on why is this
Answers.
pain continuing to show up and where it's showing up, and wanting a why. And I love that you said the tools needed for the pain being experienced, I don't have. That is powerful. And like you said, that wasn't articulated to you, but through your own healing journey and what you had to go through yourself, and understanding that the pain that you were experiencing was deeper than physical, it was emotional, and you needed that mindset work, you needed that somatic healing, you needed the different other wellness tools to be put in place to address it, to see that pain be relieved. Like that was powerful within itself. And I think we kind of have been conditioned, and I speak for not everyone, but there's a majority people, or a collective of people. I won't even say the majority. I don't want to be misspeak. There's a collective of people that have been conditioned to think that Western medicine has all the answers. They need a diagnosis, to be able to understand how they can move forward and they can heal. And there's too many women that are struggling in chronic pain, pelvic pain, fatigue, burnout, something they've been experiencing since their teens, when they first started their menstrual cycle. They've been in this pain cycle, pattern, and loop for so long. That's their normal, and they don't believe there's any other way to experience life after
Yep.
that type of pain. And maybe it's hearing us now say, your pain, it's probably more than just physical. It could be emotional. It could be spiritual. It could be mental. It could be within a root that you really haven't truly addressed and dig deep enough to even realize that it's there for you to address, to be relieved of that pain. And so if you're listening to us right now, I just want you to drop the word tools, because
Mm,
it's the right tool with the right guide at the right time when you're ready for it, to truly help you with releasing, that pain, with reducing that pain, and to really give you a different sense of life and healing. And so I'm really glad that you broke that down, Gary. And then with you saying that tissue tension, that I know too many people with that tissue tension that just comes out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, did I move a certain way? And again, you're thinking externally of what might have been causing this, and trying to find validation on the outside versus what's really going on the inside. And it's not easy to do the work of really finding out what's happening on the inside. So I just want you to know that if you're listening right now, you're not broken. You're likely just disconnected from what your nervous system has been trying to tell you all along, and probably so long that you've kind of muted that voice from your body messaging you and trying to talk about it. Garrett, you mentioned that high masking and high performance often go hand in hand. How can someone tell when their success is coming at their own expense?
Great question. Health and wellness, if they're struggling with that, probably a good indicator, right? But a lot of people that can perform really well, they have a skill that they can tune out those little feelings on the periphery. They can ignore the call of nature. They can ignore the grumbling in their stomach. They can get so absorbed in the task in front of them that all of that just turns into background noise. And some of that, is flow state. Athletes talk about it all the time. People that get lost in an activity that they love and time just disappears, and all of a sudden they come back and they're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And that's a good feeling. People who have more access to that consistently have higher scores of well-being and health than people who don't have access to that. So it's not something we don't want to experience. But it also means that if you have that skill, there comes a cost. They say, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but sometimes your strength can be the things that might kill you. If you're so strong at tuning out all these things in the periphery that you are ignoring what your body basically needs, that's going to come at a cost somewhere down the line, eventually, sooner or later. And so it really isn't about your body not being able to keep up. It's your body's doing the best it can with what we've given it, or what your environment allows you to get access to consistently, reliably, in a dependable way. And so figuring out what that is that your body needs more of or less of is so important. And making sure that you're being a champion for that, because no one else knows your body the way you do. No one else has your experience the way you do. Doesn't matter how many books they've read, doesn't matter how many hours they've spent in school. There's something that you have access to that they don't. And understanding that, honoring it, trying to communicate it with someone who's willing to listen and talk back with you and understand and get to the bottom of it, it's really hard to come by because we're so crunched on time. But it's worth trying to find.
It's definitely worth it to try to find. Yeah. I like that you talked about the background noise and how easy it is to push it to the background when it's something that you really should be listening to and addressing and trying to understand. And something else that I got out of that is that ignoring it costs. Ignoring your body, ignoring the messages, ignoring your health, your well-being, ignoring the things that you're not prioritizing or putting at a place where it should be on a higher value, it's costing you. Inaction is a cost. And so I hope that those that are listening understands that ignoring costs. Drop that in the comments. I think that's enough right there. Ignoring cost. It does. COST. There's a price that goes with ignoring things. You help clients rewire their beliefs that keep them stuck in the burnout cycle. How do you do that, Garrett?
Yeah, we got to figure out what those beliefs are, where they learned them at, how they show up now, and the rules that they make about their behavior. And then what they would rather see their behavior look like. And then what would they have to believe to make that behavior easier to do? And then we would go back and be like, okay, well, let's look at these beliefs that are at odds with this behavior that you want to emulate. Maybe at one point in time, that was an important belief for you to hold because it kept you safe. It provided you something you needed. But if we maintain that, we reinforce it, we keep it, we build it, is it now as useful as it used to be? I had my favorite pair of shoes when I was 10 years old. I cannot wear them now. Even I outgrew those a long time ago. And if I'm still trying to fit my feet into that shoes then, I'd be in pain every single day. But we do the same thing with beliefs. We create them at a moment when we need them. But sometimes they lose their usefulness over time because our environment changes. We change. Just like my feet grew. You can outgrow beliefs all the time. The hard part is you make beliefs about yourself, the world, and others. And if we don't get a chance to update those as we move through life, that can put us at odds of what we really need to be okay. And so figuring out what they are and figuring out the behaviors the rules that come from them, and then how those are at odds with the behaviors you want.
I like that. Rules of beliefs.
Yeah.
That was a good one. But I also like that you outgrow beliefs, and that shoe analogy was good. The shoes you can wear at 10 aren't the shoes that you can fit right now. But then also understanding that some beliefs kept you safe in a moment in time, and now where you are in life, how are those beliefs serving you and allowing you to be your best self and live more into your potential than not. And so I'm really glad that you kind of expanded on that and your breakdown of how you help others rewire the beliefs that have been keeping them stuck in that burnout cycle. What's your message to the women listening who's exhausted, dismissed, and just doesn't know how to start healing?
Yeah. Something that shows up a lot of times is this idea of learned helplessness, where we're put in an environment where there's no easy or good, effective, reliable way out of it. And if we've been in a lot of environments for a long time like that, it makes more sense to try to conserve our energy than to keep looking for a way out. And as eventually, that looks like learned helplessness. We'll be in environments where maybe we could do something, but we've learned that it's easier just to conserve your energy than it is to try to do all these things, right? But the one thing that kind of undoes that belief, because life is hard, it's really hard, is to know that sometimes like the game is fixed, not in your favor. That all of the effort and everything you're doing, if you're looking at someone else's results and you're looking at yours, it may not be anything to do with you specifically, your effort, your energy, your attention, your values, your drive, and everything to do with the thing you've been born into, the environment you found yourself in, and that could be rigged and not in your favor. And so to give yourself that self-compassion, to know that the game isn't always playing to your favor. And then from there being like, okay, well, if I know that, is there still something that I can do right now that in this moment will make a change? What is that first easy step? And do I feel better or worse or same because of it? Okay, great. Let's do more of the good, less of the bad. And then repetitions of that over time. It's worth it. You're worth putting in the effort. It will be beneficial. But it's hard to know that unless you've heard people that have come through it, where they can offer you their belief in yourself when you can't see it because you haven't had that experience yourself. And so a lot of times people are borrowing someone else's, like yours, your belief in them when they can't find it for themselves. And knowing that you've been able to go through it yourself and others too. That's the hard part, is they're like, I don't know if I'm worth it, but I'm going to put my effort in. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know. And that's that anxiousness. And so if you can borrow someone else's belief in yourself when you can't find it for yourself, it can get you back into that regulated state and make it easier to be you as you go through a really challenging process of change.
That's powerful, Garrett. I wrote that one down. Borrow until you can get it yourself. And that's okay. Like, give yourself permission to borrow it until you can get it yourself. And I really enjoyed the learned helplessness because you can really get to a place where you can just start doing more good than bad. And over time, that compounding interest of the good really starts to become beneficial, almost to the point where you don't have to borrow anymore because now you're the owner of that new belief, that new state of being. So we're going to move into this section I like to call vitality sparks round. So quick fire resonance. All right, you ready?
Ready?
What's a lie women still believe about burnout?
That it's their fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Complete this sentence. I feel most in alignment when I.
Get enough sleep.
What's your go-to micro regulation practice during stressful days?
Yeah, that contract, relax one. Oof. In the car, squeeze that steering wheel, clench that jaw, And if that one doesn't work, laughter works too. So I can heighten my reaction to having to swerve a little bit to the point where it sounds ridiculous. And then I can laugh at myself. And now all of a sudden we're laughing, your diaphragm's contracting, your vagus nerve is moving, and all of a sudden your heart rate variability is different. It's easier to be you if you can laugh about something.
Got it. One belief about rest you had to unlearn.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about strength being built in the gym and physique being built in the kitchen. And they're not wrong, but they're also not right. Most of it is built in the bed. I do think that sleeping your way to success is the fastest way to success, because without sleep, nothing else matters. We need it. We need it. We need it. I've always had a tough relationship with sleep my whole life. So
I've never heard it. Sleep your way to success. And I like
yeah,
it. I had to
yeah,
jot that down. Okay, let me get back to fast again. All right.
yeah,
Nervous system healing is blank, not blank.
yeah. Giving your body what it needs, not asking it for more.
A mindset mantra you come back to often.
Yeah, success is built through your well-being, not at its expense.
What does sustainable well-being look like to you right now?
Yeah, self-compassion and making sure you're on your own to-do list.
All right. Give some words of encouragement, advice, insight to the girl dads, role models, father figures, partner spouses of those dealing with pelvic pain, fatigue, endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids. How could men be more a part of that healing journey, and not on the outside, but on the inside?
Yeah. This idea of not just sharing the duties, but sharing the planning of that, like the strategy behind that, I think is important. A lot of guys are like, yeah, I'll show up, tell me what to do. Like they're at a construction site, like, point out the tools and tell me what to do and show me and I can do it. Right. But this is your partner. This is your parent. This is your daughter. This is your sister. These are people in your life. They don't have the time or the patience to be the one teaching how to do the job. You got to figure out how to do it for yourself and for them. And that's not always easy. Maybe you haven't been shown, maybe you don't know, but everyone's got to learn. So
I like it. Not acting like you're on a construction site, but really figuring out how you can really be a part and really help, and owning that experience and journey. All right. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you all eat?
It'd be Simone de Beauvoir. She's a French philosopher. She's her famous husband's wife, but I think she wrote most of the more poignant of his works too. She's got some accreditation coming out now with her journals, but she's French, so probably some nice pastries and some coffee, hopefully.
Okay, all right. Well, Garrett, let everybody know where they can find you and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, if they want to be really professional, they can follow me on the professional platform LinkedIn. It's Gnosis Therapy, my name. If they're more personable and they're on Instagram, they can find me there as well at Gnosis Therapy.
Yes, Garrett, I really appreciated you having this conversation with me, being a guest on the Empire Plays, Empire Lives podcast. Y'all, burnout isn't the result of failure. It's the result of a nervous system that hasn't felt safe in too long. Sustainable success isn't built through sacrifice. It's built through self-respect. If your body is whispering or even screaming, it's time to listen, because when you honor your unique needs, your body will finally begin to heal, not through perfection, but through partnership. Y'all, it's your Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach Jovonnie, host of the Empire Plates, Empire Lives podcast. Check the show notes, take the Spot Your Trigger quiz so you can become aware of the triggers, the habits that are fueling your pelvic pain, your burnout, your inflammation, and figure out how you can start showing up in a place of love, care, and attention, because you deserve it. And catch the 15 hidden lifestyle disruptors guide as well, so you'll know all the different tools that are at your fingertips. Y'all, it's your Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach Jovonnie. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.